Here's the thing about kindness, it always costs something. And on the coldest night of the year, when the snow turned the city into a frozen graveyard, Lexi Morgan paid a price she didn't know would change everything. She gave away the only thing standing between her and death itself. The snow didn't fall that night. It attacked. Each flake a frozen dagger cutting through the city's indifference, through skin, through hope itself. The temperature had dropped to -15, and the wind screamed through empty streets like something alive and hunting. Dion Fletcher sat slumped against a brick wall near the gated entrance of an office building that had closed hours ago, his body shaking so violently he could no longer feel his fingers. His shoes were soaked through, jeans frozen stiff against his legs, and his breath came in shallow gasps that formed clouds he could barely see through the whiteout. He had been there for 40 minutes. Maybe longer. Time stopped meaning anything when your body started shutting down. Hey. You need help? Dion looked up through half-frozen eyelashes and saw a woman standing over him. Mid-20s, wearing a bright red puffer jacket zipped to her throat and a yellow shirt visible at the collar. Her face was shadowed by the storm, but her eyes held something he hadn't seen in a long time. Concern. Real concern. Not pity. I'm fine, Dion lied through chattering teeth, turning his face away. Pride was a dangerous thing, but it was all he had left. No, you're not. She knelt down beside him, ignoring the snow soaking through her jeans. You're hypothermic. Your lips are blue. You need to get warm or you're going to die out here. Just leave me alone. His voice cracked. Shame tasted worse than the cold. The woman didn't argue. She didn't lecture him or try to drag him to his feet. Instead, her hands moved to the zipper of her jacket. The only jacket she was wearing. What are you doing? Dion tried to focus on her face, but his vision was blurring. She pulled the red puffer coat off her shoulders, revealing nothing underneath but a thin yellow t-shirt already trembling against the wind. Keeping you alive. No. No, you can't. Dion reached out weakly to push it back, but she had already draped it over him, wrapping it around his shoulders and pulling the collar tight. The fabric still held her body heat. Smelled faintly of cheap laundry detergent and something floral. Life. You'll freeze to death, he whispered. I live 2 blocks away. The lie came so easily it almost sounded true. She didn't tell him about the studio apartment 4 miles across town. Didn't mention the unpaid heating bill or the fact that this coat was the only thing keeping her from getting frostbite on her walk home from the late shift. Didn't explain that she had $17 left in her bank account and a landlord threatening eviction. Wait. Dion grabbed her wrist as she started to stand. What's your name? She hesitated. For a moment, she almost answered. But people like her had learned long ago that being invisible was safer than being known. Just stay warm, she said softly, pulling her hand free. And then she was gone. Walking into the storm wearing nothing but that thin yellow shirt, her arms wrapped tight around herself, her brown hair already white with snow. Walking toward home. Walking toward death. Walking away from the one decision that would rewrite her entire life. What Lexi Morgan didn't know was that the freezing young man she had just saved wasn't some random stranger lost in the storm. He was Dion Fletcher, the nephew of Jimmy Fletcher, a 39-year-old Mafia boss whose name alone made hardened criminals look over their shoulders. A man who controlled half the city through fear, blood, and calculated violence. A man whose enemies didn't just disappear, they were erased from existence. And when Jimmy Fletcher discovered what had happened that night, 2 things would follow. First, a reckoning. Because no one left his nephew to die in the street without answering for it. And second, a protection so absolute, so consuming, that Lexi Morgan would finally understand what it meant to be seen by a monster who never forgot a debt. Who never forgave a slight. And who never, ever let go of what belonged to him. If this story makes your heart race, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because trust me, Jimmy Fletcher's obsession is just beginning. 1 coat. 2 broken souls. And a debt that even blood can't repay. At the same time, across the city, in a private room at the Apex Club where only the most dangerous men in the underworld were allowed to breathe the same air. Jimmy Fletcher sat at the head of a polished mahogany table, a crystal tumbler of whiskey untouched in front of him. 3 crime bosses occupied the seats around him, smoke from Cuban cigars curling toward the vaulted ceiling. They were discussing territory disputes, money laundering routes, arrangements sealed with threats and promises that would never see the light of day. Jimmy listened more than he spoke. That was his way. Because men who talked too much usually ended up with their mouths permanently shut. He wore a glittering black suit tailored to perfection, a Rolex Daytona gleaming on his wrist, his dark hair styled back, and his cold gray eyes revealing absolutely nothing. At 39, Jimmy Fletcher had built an empire his father had only dreamed of. And he had done it through ruthless efficiency, through suffocating control, and through one unbreakable rule: never show weakness. Never show mercy. But Jimmy had one weakness. A single crack in the armor that everyone knew about but no one dared exploit. Dion. His nephew. The boy he'd raised after his sister died. The only person left in the world who still looked at him like he was human. The phone in Jimmy's pocket vibrated. He glanced at the screen and saw Marcus's name. His head of security. The man who never called during business unless the world was on fire. Jimmy raised the phone to his ear and said nothing. He only listened. Marcus's voice on the other end held just 3 words. Found Dion. Hospital. The world stopped. The cigar smoke suddenly became suffocating. Or perhaps Jimmy no longer noticed anything except the cold fury rising in his chest like ice water. He didn't ask questions. There was no need. Those 3 words told him everything. Jimmy stood slowly, every movement perfectly controlled. The other bosses fell silent, watching him with the instinct of predators who recognized something far more dangerous than themselves. They saw something very few people lived long enough to describe. Jimmy Fletcher's rage. Cold. Calculated. And already calculating who would pay for this in blood. But to understand what happened next, you need to understand who Lexi Morgan really was. Because the woman who walked into that storm wasn't just kind. She was a survivor. And survivors don't give away their last chance at warmth unless they've already made peace with losing everything. Dion woke to white walls and the smell of antiseptic cutting through expensive cologne. His ribs screamed. His jaw throbbed. But he was alive. The hospital room was too quiet. Too private. No nurses bustling. No machines beeping from neighboring beds. Just him, crisp sheets, and the kind of care money bought in silence. He turned his head. 2 men stood outside the glass door. Suits. Earpieces. Guns barely concealed under tailored jackets. No asterisk. Dion's stomach dropped. He tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his torso, forcing him back down. The heat was unbearable. Someone had cranked the thermostat to sauna levels. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The door opened. Jimmy Fletcher walked in like he owned the building. Probably did. The Mafia boss was 52 and looked 40. Silver threading through dark hair. Expensive watch. Calm smile that never reached his eyes. He pulled up a chair, sitting like they were about to discuss the weather. Dion. Uncle Jimmy. Dion's voice cracked. You've been gone 2 years. Jimmy leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. Your mother cries every Sunday. Your father drinks every night. And you? He gestured around the room. You're getting beaten half to death in alleyways. Dion said nothing. Why'd you run? The question hung in the overheated air. Because I didn't want to be you, Dion finally said. I didn't want to hurt people. Didn't want to wake up wondering if today's the day someone puts a bullet in my head. Jimmy's expression didn't change. And how's that working out? Dion looked away. The Mafia boss pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. Security footage from the restaurant across the street. He turned it toward Dion. The video played. Grainy but clear enough. 3 men cornering Dion. The beating. Then. Her, asterisk. Lexi stumbling forward. Yelling. Drawing their attention. Dion watched himself run. Watched her shake. Watched her walk away into the dark. The video froze on her face. Jimmy studied the screen. She saved your life. I don't know who she is. But you remember her. Dion nodded slowly. Jimmy pocketed the phone. Stood. Adjusted his cuffs with the precision of a man who controlled everything, including his own violence. He walked to the door, paused. Find her, Jimmy said to the men outside. Not a request. An order. Dion's heart stopped. Uncle Jimmy, she's not, she was just walking by. She doesn't know anything. The Mafia boss looked back. His smile was almost kind. Exactly. Which means she's either very brave or very stupid. He tilted his head. Either way, we need to know which. The door clicked shut. Dion stared at the ceiling, guilt crushing his chest worse than any beating. She'd saved him. Now his family was hunting her. And if they found her first, if they thought she was a threat, he had to warn her. Had to find her before they did. For the first time in 2 years, Dion Fletcher decided to stop running. Lexi made it through the night by walking. 3 miles in the wrong direction. Then back. Then in circles until her legs went numb and the shaking stopped being from fear and started being from cold. By the time dawn broke gray and listless over the city, her fingers were white at the tips. Frostbite kissing the edges. She flexed them in her coat pockets, hissing at the sting. The diner opened at 6. She was there at 5:50, waiting by the employee entrance like nothing had happened. Because nothing had happened. That's what she told herself. Some guy got jumped. She yelled. He ran. She went home. Simple. The kind of story that didn't need repeating. Lexi Morgan had learned early that survival meant keeping your head down and your mouth shut. Her parents died when she was 8, car accident on a winter road not unlike the one she'd walked last night. The foster system had taught her that asking questions got you moved. Caring too much got you hurt. So she stopped asking. Stopped caring. At 23, she had a studio apartment with heat that worked half the time, a waitress job that paid just enough to keep the lights on, and a stack of unpaid bills that grew taller every month. She had no family. No friends who'd notice if she disappeared. She was invisible. and invisible people survived. 3 days passed. Lexi worked her shifts. Smiled at customers. Pocketed tips. Said nothing about the alley or the men or the boy who'd run like hell was chasing him. Nobody asked. So nobody knew. She was wiping down tables during the lunch rush when the bell above the door chimed. 2 men walked in. Black suits. Expensive. The kind that didn't belong in a place where coffee cost $1 and the pie was day old. Lexi's hands stilled on the table. They scanned the room with the practiced efficiency of predators, then locked eyes on her. Her stomach dropped. No asterisk. They crossed the diner and measured steps. Customers glanced up, then quickly looked away. Even the cook went quiet. The taller one stopped at her table. Dark eyes. No smile. Lexi Morgan? She swallowed. Yeah. We need you to come with us. I'm working. Not anymore. The shorter one pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. It was her. Grainy security footage. The alley. Her face frozen mid-shout. Her blood went cold. Who are you? That doesn't matter. The tall one pocketed his phone. What matters is that the Mafia boss would like to see you. The diner had gone completely silent. Lexi's fingers, still tender from frostbite, curled into fists at her sides. And if I say no? The shorter one almost smiled. Almost. Jimmy Fletcher doesn't ask twice. The taller one gestured toward the door. Cars outside. Lexi looked at her manager behind the counter. He wouldn't meet her eyes. She looked at the other waitress. At the customers. At the cook. All of them suddenly very interested in their food. No one was going to help her. No one ever did. Lexi untied her apron, hung it on the back of a chair, and walked toward the door. The penthouse was colder than the street. All glass and marble. Chrome fixtures. Views that stretched across the city like a map of everything the Mafia boss controlled. Lexi stood in the center of the room, coat still on, frostbitten fingers hidden in her pockets. Jimmy Fletcher sat behind a desk that probably cost more than her yearly rent. He looked like every nightmare the news warned you about, calm, composed, and completely in control. Miss Morgan. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please. Sit. I'm fine standing. His eyebrow lifted. Barely. Suit yourself. Silence stretched between them. You saved my nephew's life, Jimmy finally said. Lexi said nothing. Dion tells me you didn't know who he was. Didn't ask for anything. Just intervened. The Mafia boss leaned back. That's unusual. Someone needed help. And you decided to provide it. He opened a drawer, pulled out an envelope. Thick. Heavy. There's $50,000 here. Gratitude. For your trouble. He slid it across the desk. Lexi didn't move. Take it, Jimmy said. No. The word hung in the cold air. Jimmy's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. No. I didn't do it for money. Everyone does things for money. I don't want yours. Silence again. Longer this time. The Mafia boss studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. In 30 years of controlling this city, he'd seen every kind of person, the greedy, the desperate, the ambitious, the broken. He'd bought them all. Bent them all. No one refused him. No one, asterisk. Then let me offer you something else, he said carefully. Protection. People know you helped my nephew. That makes you a target. Rivals. Enemies. They'll come looking. I'll take my chances. You don't understand what you're. I understand perfectly. Lexi's voice stayed level. You want to own me. Make me dependent. But I'm not interested in being anyone's debt or anyone's problem. Jimmy stood slowly. Walked around the desk. Stopped 5 feet away. He was taller than she expected. More dangerous up close. You have frostbite on your fingers, he observed quietly. You work at a diner that barely pays minimum wage. Your landlord is 3 months from evicting you. He tilted his head. I know everything about you, Miss Morgan. You're one bad day from homeless. That's my business. It became mine when you stepped into that alley. I didn't ask for this. Neither did Dion. The Mafia boss's tone softened. Almost. But here we are. Lexi met his eyes. Didn't flinch. Are we done? Jimmy watched her. Really watched her. Seeing something he hadn't expected. Strength. Real strength. Not the kind you bought or built, the kind you survived into. She wasn't weak. She was rare. Marcus. Vincent. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. The 2 men from the diner appeared in the doorway. Miss Morgan will have protection, Jimmy said. 24 hours. Rotating shifts. Lexi's jaw tightened. I said no. I heard you. The Mafia boss returned to his desk. But I don't need your permission. You can't just. I can. He sat down. And I am. Their eyes locked. You'll never own me, Lexi said quietly. Jimmy almost smiled. I don't want to. She turned and walked out. The Mafia boss watched her go, the envelope still sitting untouched on his desk. The Volkov family noticed on day 4. In Jimmy Fletcher's world, attention was currency. And when the Mafia boss assigned 2 armed men to a nobody waitress, people started asking questions. Dangerous questions. Lexi felt the shift before she understood it. The way people watched her now at the diner. The way conversations stopped when she approached tables. The black sedan that appeared outside her apartment building, not Jimmy's men, someone else's. She wasn't invisible anymore. And that, she was learning, was a death sentence. Dion showed up at the diner during her evening shift. He looked better. Bruises fading to yellow. Ribs probably still broken, but he moved easier now. We need to talk, he said, sliding into a corner booth. Lexi poured him coffee without asking. About? About leaving. She sat down across from him. I have a job. An apartment. You have a target on your back. Dion leaned forward, voice low. The Volkovs think you're important to Jimmy. They think he's protecting you because you know something. Or because you are something. I'm a waitress. They don't care. His eyes were desperate. They'll use you to get to him. And when they're done, he stopped. Swallowed. You need to leave the city. Tonight. Lexi looked at him. Really looked. This boy who'd run from his family. Who'd spent 2 years hiding from the violence that raised him. I've been running my whole life, she said quietly. Foster homes. Bad situations. Debt. I'm tired of it. Being tired gets you killed. Maybe. But at least I'll die standing still. Dion opened his mouth to argue. The diner window exploded. Glass erupted inward. Screaming. Tables overturned. Lexi hit the floor, Dion on top of her. Gunfire, sharp, quick, professional. Then different gunfire. Returning. Jimmy's men. It lasted 15 seconds. Felt like 15 hours. When the silence came back, it brought smoke and the smell of gunpowder. Dion pulled Lexi up. Her hands were bleeding from glass. His face was white. Outside, 3 bodies lay on the pavement. Not Jimmy's men. Volkov's. Marcus appeared in the shattered doorway, gun still drawn. Car. Now. They didn't argue. The penthouse again. Jimmy was waiting. He looked at Lexi's bleeding hands. At Dion's shaking. At the terror neither of them could hide. Vincent, he said calmly. Send flowers to the families. Which families? All of them. The Mafia boss's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. And make sure Dmitry Volkov understands that touching what's mine has consequences. How severe? Jimmy finally looked away from Lexi. Extremely. By morning, 4 more Volkovs were dead. 2 warehouses burned. A shipment worth $2 million disappeared. The message was clear. Jimmy Fletcher protected his own. And the cost of testing that was blood. Lexi sat in her guarded apartment, hands bandaged, and stared at nothing. She'd saved 1 person. Now people were dying because of it. The invisibility that had kept her safe for 23 years was gone. Shattered like that diner window. And the Mafia boss, the man who didn't need her permission, who made decisions like they were gospel, had just declared war over a girl who only wanted to survive. Lexi understood now. Being seen by Jimmy Fletcher didn't save you. It marked you. And marks, in his world, were written in blood. The Mafia boss didn't sleep. Lexi found him at 3 a.m., standing at the penthouse windows, glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. You should be resting, Jimmy said without turning. So should you. I don't rest. He took a sip. Finally. I calculate. Lexi approached slowly, bandaged hands tucked in her coat pockets. The city sprawled below them, dark and glittering and violent. Dion's parents, she said quietly. Your brother and sister-in-law. He never talks about them. Jimmy's jaw tightened. Anthony was my younger brother. Better than me in every way that mattered. His voice was measured. Careful. Kind. Gentle. Wanted nothing to do with the family business. What happened? I convinced him it was safe. That I could protect him and his wife and their son. The Mafia boss's reflection in the glass looked older suddenly. Tired. Rival family hit their car 6 years ago. Anthony died instantly. Maria survived 3 days in the hospital before he stopped. Dion blames you. He should. Jimmy finally turned to face her. I promised protection and delivered coffins. He ran because staying meant becoming me. And I let him go because he was right to run. Lexi studied him. This man who controlled everything. Who made people disappear with a phone call. Who'd burned warehouses over her. You're not a monster, she said. Yes, I am. Monsters don't feel guilt. Jimmy's expression shifted. Something vulnerable breaking through. Feeling it doesn't absolve me of earning it. Dion appeared in the doorway. We need to talk, he said, looking at his uncle. Jimmy nodded. Lexi. I'm staying, she interrupted. The Mafia boss didn't argue. Dion walked in, still moving carefully. You can't keep doing this. The Volkovs. The retaliation. More bodies. More blood. They attacked first. Because you made her a target. Dion's voice cracked. I ran from this life because I was tired of watching you destroy everything you touch. And now you're doing it again. To her. I'm protecting her. You're owning her. Just like you own everyone else. Dion's hands shook. That's what you do. You take people and you turn them into weapons or shields or debts to be paid. You did it to my father. You're doing it to her. That's not. Isn't it? Silence crashed between them. Jimmy looked at Lexi. Then at Dion. Then at his own hands like he was seeing the blood on them for the first time. I failed your father, he said quietly. I won't fail you. Then let her go. I can't. Why? The Mafia boss closed his eyes. Because you make my enemies brave, he said, looking at Lexi. Every crime family in this city is watching. Waiting. They see someone I'm protecting who isn't family. Who isn't part of the organization. And they wonder, he paused. They wonder if Jimmy Fletcher has found something he cares about more than power. Have you? Dion asked. Jimmy didn't answer. Didn't need to. Lexi felt the weight of it. The truth neither of them had said. She'd stepped into that alley to save one person. Now she was changing too. And the Mafia boss, the man who feared nothing, was terrified of what that meant. So what happens now? Lexi asked. Jimmy met her eyes. Now we survive. It happened in broad daylight. Lexi was walking to the bodega 3 blocks from her apartment, Marcus trailing 10 feet behind, Vincent checking the perimeter, when the van pulled up. 4 men. Military precision. Flashbang. Smoke. Chaos. Marcus went down first. Rubber bullets. Vincent reached for his gun and took 2 to the chest. Body armor saved him, but he was on the ground, gasping. Lexi ran. Didn't make it 5 steps. Something jabbed her neck. Chemical burn. The world tilted sideways. She hit the pavement, vision blurring. The last thing she saw was Marcus struggling to his feet, blood streaming from his temple, screaming into his phone. Then nothing. The message arrived 2 hours later. A photo of Lexi, unconscious, zip-tied to a chair. Then text, * Brooklyn territory. Pier 7 access. 24 hours. Or we send her back in pieces, *. Jimmy stared at his phone. The penthouse had gone completely silent. Dion stood across the desk. Marcus was there too, bandaged, furious at himself. Vincent in the corner, ribs wrapped, guilt etched into every line of his face. Sir? Marcus said quietly. The Mafia boss didn't respond. He set the phone down. Walked to the window. Looked out at the city that bent to his will. Someone had taken what was his. Someone thought they could negotiate. Someone had miscalculated fatally. Sir, Marcus tried again. What are your orders? Jimmy's voice, when it came, was quieter than death. Find them. And then? The Mafia boss turned. His eyes were empty of everything except purpose. War. Within 3 hours, Jimmy had mobilized everything. Every soldier. Every contact. Every debt owed and favor banked. The Volkovs had made their move thinking Jimmy would trade territory for a girl. They were wrong. I'm coming with you, Dion said. Jimmy looked at his nephew. The boy who'd run from violence. Who'd spent 2 years trying to be anything except a Fletcher. This isn't your fight. She saved my life. Dion's voice didn't shake. That makes it mine. Something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. The Mafia boss nodded once. Vincent. Get him a vest and a weapon. Sir. He's family. Jimmy's tone left no room for argument. He bleeds with us or not at all. Dion stepped forward. Held out his hand. Jimmy looked at it. Then took it. The handshake lasted 3 seconds. Blood bond. Sealed. We get her back, Dion said. The Mafia boss's smile was terrible to witness. And then we teach them what happens when you touch a Fletcher's world. Marcus pulled up the city grid on the conference table. Red dots marking known Volkov locations. Vincent began loading magazines. The sound of metal on metal, familiar, deadly. Dion checked his weapon. Hands steadier than they should be. Jimmy made one phone call. Just one. It's time, he said into the phone. Everyone. He hung up. Across the city, soldiers moved. Engines started. Safe houses emptied. The Mafia boss put on his coat. Checked his gun. Looked at his nephew, really looked at him, and saw his brother's face. His brother's courage. Anthony would be proud, Jimmy said quietly. Dion's jaw tightened. Let's go get her. By nightfall, the Volkovs would learn what every crime family in the city already knew. Jimmy Fletcher didn't negotiate. He eradicated. And the girl they'd taken wasn't a bargaining chip. She was the match that would burn their entire empire to ash. The warehouse reeked of rust and river water. Lexi woke to the sound of someone sharpening a knife. Her head throbbed. Hands zip-tied behind the chair. Ankles bound. Blood crusted on her temple where she'd hit the pavement. Dmitry Volkov sat across from her, older than she expected, gray at the temples, expensive suit incongruous with the warehouse setting. Miss Morgan, he said pleasantly. You're awake. She said nothing. Your employer will trade Brooklyn for you. Simple exchange. He smiled. You should feel honored. You're worth an entire territory. He won't trade. Of course he will. Jimmy Fletcher is many things, but he's practical. You don't know him. Dimitri's smile faded. I've known him for 20 years. Then you should know better. The knife stopped sharpening. Outside, somewhere in the distance, gunfire erupted. Jimmy hit the first Volkov location at midnight. A gambling den on the east side. 6 men inside. The Mafia boss walked in alone while Dion and the others covered exits. None of the 6 walked out. Where is she? Jimmy asked the last one, gun pressed to his temple. The man gave up the second location. They moved like a storm through the city, methodical, merciless. A chop shop in Queens. A drug house in the Bronx. Each place, more bodies. Each place, another answer. Dion watched his uncle work. Watched the legend become real. This was what his father had run from. What he himself had escaped. But tonight, watching Jimmy dismantle an empire piece by piece for one girl, Dion understood something else. Monsters didn't do this. Monsters didn't care. By 3 a.m., they had the warehouse. Lexi heard the gunfire before she saw them. Distant. Then closer. Then right outside. Dimitri's men scrambled. Radios crackling. Panic setting in like flood water. The door exploded inward. Jimmy Fletcher walked through smoke and death, suit jacket gone, white shirt painted red with someone else's blood. His eyes found hers. The world stopped. "Clear the room," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Dion and the others moved through with surgical precision. Gunfire. Screams. Silence. Within seconds, every Volkov soldier was down. Except Dimitri. The Mafia boss crossed to Lexi, cut her restraints with a knife that had already taken 3 lives tonight. His hands, always steady, always controlled, trembled as he touched her face. "Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay." "Did they hurt you?" "Jimmy." "I'm okay." He closed his eyes. Breathed. Then stood and turned to Dimitri. The old man had pressed himself against the far wall, gun kicked away, nowhere left to run. "You made a mistake," the Mafia boss said, crossing the warehouse floor like a predator who'd already tasted blood. "Fletcher, please, we can negotiate." "You don't negotiate with what's mine." Jimmy raised his gun. "Don't." Lexi's voice cut through everything. The Mafia boss froze, finger on the trigger. She stood on shaking legs, zip tie marks bleeding on her wrists, but her eyes were clear. "Don't kill him. Lexi. Please." She walked toward him, each step deliberate. "You've killed everyone else. Torn apart his organization. Made your point." She stopped in front of him. "Don't become the thing Dion ran from." Jimmy stared at her. At this girl who'd survived captivity through will alone. Who'd been kidnapped, terrorized, beaten. Who had every right to want vengeance. And she was asking for mercy. "He would have killed you," Jimmy said quietly. "But he didn't." She reached up, gently pushed the gun down. "You saved me. You don't have to destroy him too." The warehouse held its breath. Then, slowly, the Mafia boss lowered his weapon completely. "Marcus. Take him. Federal custody. Anonymous tip." Marcus grabbed Dimitri roughly, hauled him toward the door. Jimmy never looked away from Lexi. "You changed the terms," he said. "You let me." And there it was. The shift. The moment. A Mafia boss choosing mercy because one person believed he could. Dion watched from the shadows, seeing his uncle truly for the first time. Not a monster. A man. The change had begun. Lexi spent 3 days in the penthouse recovering. Not because Jimmy insisted, though he did. But because she was too exhausted to argue. Her hands healed. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to gone. The zip-tie scars on her wrists remained, thin white lines that would probably never fully disappear. Reminders. Dion visited every day. Brought her coffee from the diner where she used to work. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. On the 4th day, he told her he was leaving. Where? She asked. West Coast. Maybe Portland. Somewhere it rains. He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Somewhere I can start over. Really start over. Does Jimmy know? He gave me the money for the plane ticket. Dion's voice was quiet. Said he failed my father by keeping him close. Wasn't going to fail me the same way. Lexi reached across the table, squeezed his hand. You're going to be okay. So are you. He squeezed back. Thank you. For everything. Stay safe. You too. He left the next morning. No fanfare. No goodbyes beyond the one they'd already said. Just gone. Finally free. Jimmy restructured everything. Brooklyn territory went neutral, a peace offering that shocked every crime family in the city. The Volkov organization was dismantled, absorbed, scattered to the wind. The Mafia boss became quieter. More selective. He still controlled the empire, but differently now. Less blood. More calculation. More mercy. Marcus noticed. Vincent noticed. Everyone noticed. She changed him, Vincent said one night over drinks. Marcus just nodded. Changed all of us. 2 weeks after the warehouse, Jimmy called Lexi to the penthouse one final time. She walked in expecting another conversation about protection or relocation or staying in the city under guard. Instead, he led her to the far wall. There, mounted in a custom frame behind museum-quality glass, hung the red puffer jacket. Cleaned. Restored. Preserved. Spotlit like fine art. Lexi stared at it. At the coat she'd worn that night in the alley. The one that had been stained with dirt and fear and someone else's blood. I don't understand, she said quietly. The Mafia boss stood beside her, hands in his pockets, looking at the jacket like it was a holy relic. That coat changed everything, he said. You wore it into an alley when any smart person would have walked away. You intervened when intervention could have gotten you killed. He paused. You showed my nephew that courage doesn't require violence. You showed me that power doesn't have to mean destruction. It's just a coat. It's proof. Jimmy turned to face her. That one act of kindness can rewrite an empire. Lexi felt tears building. Didn't fight them this time. What happens now? She asked. Now you live. However you want. Wherever you want. The Mafia boss's voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Protected. Free. No debts. And you? I try to become the man you believed I could be. She laughed through tears. I never asked you to change. No, Jimmy agreed. You just acted like I could. That was worse. They stood there in silence, looking at the framed jacket. A waitress and a Mafia boss. Kindness and violence. Two people who should never have crossed paths but had somehow saved each other. It stays here, Jimmy said finally. A reminder. That strength isn't always loud. That mercy isn't weakness. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is care when caring costs you everything. Lexi wiped her eyes. Thank you. No, Miss Morgan. The Mafia boss smiled, genuine, rare, real. Thank you. Years later, people would tell stories about the red coat in Jimmy Fletcher's office. About the girl who wore it into an alley and changed a Mafia boss's world. Some would call her brave. Others foolish. Most would call her lucky. They'd all be wrong. Lexi Morgan wasn't brave or foolish or lucky. She was simply someone who chose kindness when cruelty was easier. And in a world built on blood and fear and violence, that choice had rewritten everything. Kindness didn't make her weak. It rewrote an empire.